her favorite motto is "Give while you live." And she really lives by that motto. And I think that so many of us have heard it and see the truth in what she says, that I think she's had a great influence in what people give while they live here in this community.
Betty Schoenbaum was born Betty Frank on September 27, 1917 in Dayton, Ohio, to Samuel and Sarah Frank. Her father was a successful businessman who ran a family-owned butter, egg, and poultry wholesale business. She was the second oldest of 4 children. Her mother made sure she and her siblings experienced the finer things of life.
My mother lived vicariously through my sister and I, and our lives were filled with dancing. She played the violin, I played the piano, and we took elocution, which nowadays we call public speaking. So we were busy. We were truly busy, and we loved dancing. We loved it.
Dancing was the center of she and her sister's lives. They would dance whenever they had an opportunity.
Every year the butter, egg, and poultry people would have a convention in Columbus, Ohio, and my sister and I always did the performing. We would play a duet, violin, piano, and then we'd go into our song and dance. Of course, it didn't ever take very much time for us to dance. If we heard music, we started dancing, that was all.
Growing up in the early 20th century was far different from the world today. There was no TV, no internet, and few movies.
We had much more conversation in the home, much more interaction between the family. I think it made a family closer not to have television, because everybody goes and watches the program they want. It separates the family.
There was radio, and inside that magic box was adventures and fun waiting to fill their imaginations.
The radio, it was Amos and Andy, and I guess maybe it was a good time because you listened to the programs and there wasn't anything distracting you. Your ear, all it took was your ear, and the rest of you just sat there and listened.
As children, they could always find something to entertain themselves.
We played kick can. You take a can and kick it around and see if you could get it to the other side of the street or something. It was a wonderful childhood, but I didn't have much time because I took dancing almost every day. For 15 years, I studied dancing from 3 to 18. I did tap dancing, was my favorite, but I did ballet also. And at that time, they had a dance called Grecian dancing, which now is modern dance, and we took that also.
The Frank family spent their summers together in simple fashion at a lakeside cottage.
My mother wanted to join the country club, and my father joined the country club and found out that's not the way he wanted to spend weekends, with his wife playing bridge, him playing poker, and the kids out in the swimming pool. So he bought a cottage on a lake, 15 miles from Dayton, 40 foot deep, you could see to the bottom, no motorboats, no speedboats, a canoe and a rowboat is all we owned, and beautiful beach, and that's where we spent our summers.
Betty's father would drive them back and forth in his 1920 Roadster.
It has 4 white side walls, a top that came down, and I remember it had isinglass curtains that you would snap with little clips up if it started raining. I remember they had a crank in the front. You had to crank it to get it to start. And my father was so proud of that car, as any young man is when he's got a new car.
Betty was so well trained at dance that she and her dance troupe won a major dance contest that took them to New York City.
RKO Theater was having a contest to find out the best, well, let's say, American Idol. And it was vaudeville. We didn't have television. And so we won the local one, we won the regional one, and we won the national one. We did Ankles Away.
Betty attended McKinley Elementary School.
I lived across the street from the school, and I remember my mother in snowy weather carrying me across the street to school.
She went to high school at Steele High School in Dayton, Ohio. Betty was a good student, but she found she excelled in physical education.
Phys ed was my favorite because with all the dancing I did, I was good. In fact, in high school, I was the center on the basketball team. At 5'8½", I was the tallest one in my class, so I got to be the center.
Her best subject was English, where she put her elocution skills to good use as part of the senior debate team.
And I think the subject was that the United States should own and operate their own hydroelectric power plants like Canada. That was my subject.
Betty graduated from high school in 1935 and set her sights on college.
My decision to go to Ohio State University was at that time you could get a year's education at Ohio State, room, board, and tuition for $411. I wanted to study advertising, layout, and it was the war years, and my sister was studying dancing in New York, and my parents couldn't afford to send me any place but Ohio State University. So I thank God I got that education.
It was also at Ohio State University where she met a young, handsome football star by the name of Alex Schoenbaum. Her freshman year, she and some friends from her sorority were assigned to meet the young men at a fraternity rush party. She arrived at the location but wasn't sure where she should go.
I come down to the lobby and I look around, I don't know a soul there, and there's thousands of people gathering for these rush parties. So I see a big fella at the bottom of the stairs, and I thought, well, he looks like a senior. I'll just ask him, maybe he'll know.
She thought I was a senior instead of a freshman. When she asked me about the fraternity dance, I looked at her and pointed my finger at her, and I said, "Are you Jewish?"
I didn't answer him, and I went to the party, and lo and behold, he was rushed Phi Sigma Delta and was already asked to be there because he was a very good football player. And he came over to ask me for a dance. I said, "I'm not going to dance with you." That was very rude of you to ask. What if I wasn't Jewish? Wouldn't you have been embarrassed? No? I said, well, then why did you ask a question like that?
I said my mother had always wanted her sons to marry Jewish girls, and I had never met one that I liked or that I thought was good looking enough for me to marry. And I said, you were a bright light to me from the standpoint of somebody I could think about.
With that, we danced. We were good friends for a couple of years, but I really didn't date him steady until my junior year.
After the first quarter of college, Betty changed her major to business. Betty also put her talents to use, entertaining with her sorority for charitable functions.
In college, my dancing followed me, and I got quite a few cups for dancing, but I found out I was too tall to be a professional dancer. I was 5'8½" at that time, and the average was 5'4" to 5'6".
While in college, Betty earned extra income as a model at a local department store.
My parents decided that it's healthy for a girl to learn to earn money for herself, which I had never done before. So I went down to Lazarus and I modeled in their dining room on Saturdays when I was going to college.
Modeling was not always an easy way to make a living.
One time I modeled fur coats out of an igloo and no air conditioning in the store in the middle of summer. Okay.
As a young woman, Betty picked up the nickname of Betty Boop.
In the late 20s, Betty Boop became very famous, and my name was Betty, so I was Betty Boop. In fact, my son Jeff still calls me Betty Boop.
Betty and Alex maintained a close friendship through college. However, in the summer of their junior year, it would blossom into romance when Alex would visit her in her home in Dayton.
He worked at Lazarus department store. He was a protege of Simon Lazarus and who helped him get his scholarship to college. And he stayed and worked at Lazarus in the summertime. And therefore, he had time to come over. My cousin used to drive over from Columbus. He'd come with him. And he said, you know, he says, I'd like to see more of you in the fall. I said, well, we'll see when we get back, you know. And by After football season, he gave me his fraternity pin, so I was going steady.
After the couple graduated from college, Alex went to work in the insurance business. He was working hard, but was not quite ready for marriage.
He was an All-American football player at Ohio State, and he was very well known in Columbus, Ohio. And he started selling insurance. He did very well because he was well known as a football player on the team. He wanted to make $1 million before he got married. And finally, I pinned him down, gave him a month to marry me, or else we'd stop going with each other, and it worked.
The couple married in a small ceremony on April 14, 1940, at the Biltmore Hotel in Dayton, Ohio. They honeymooned in Annapolis, Maryland.
We had to go to Annapolis, Maryland, because his brother was at the Naval Academy and wasn't allowed to come home for the wedding because they were trying to push boys through real fast. And that's the first class. They graduated a half year early because they needed officers to go into the Second World War.
They returned to Columbus, Ohio, where they began their lives together in a $40 a month furnished apartment, and Betty began her life as a businessman's wife.
He wouldn't let me work. I'd been a model at Lazarus during my school years, and he would not allow me to even go down to Lazarus and model. He was a macho man. What did I do? Well, my floors were so clean and shiny, you'd slip on them because all I could do was clean house. I did go back to Ohio State and take 2 courses just to enrich my life. It was an enrichment, more or less.
Betty became involved in volunteer work as well as studies, and of course, running the couple's home. On April 15, 1947, their first child, Raymond, was born.
First child wasn't born until I was 28 years old. I was having difficulty carrying a child. My first child at 28, and 14 months later, his brother arrived at 29. And 10 years later, the sister arrived at 39. And 9.5 years later, I had one at 48.5 years old, and I call my life unplanned parenthood.
Life was going well for the couple. Alex was finding success in the insurance business and planned to make it his career. However, fate stepped in when his father, who owned a bowling business in Charleston, West Virginia, took ill. While Alex had 3 brothers, his brother, who had been working with their father in the bowling business, was drafted into the Army. They left for Charleston to help out, with all intentions to return to Columbus and the insurance business.
He had never done anything in the bowling alley except set pins when he was a little boy. And so he had to learn the bowling business. And we went to Huntington, West Virginia, where they had 2 bowling alleys, and they had built a new one in Charleston, West Virginia. So we moved to Charleston, West Virginia to run that one. The father came back to run the ones in Huntington because they were easier to run. And then the brother, who was supposed to come back, never came back from the war. He was killed in the Battle of the Bulge. So we stayed down in Charleston, West Virginia, lived in Charleston, West Virginia. He ran the bowling alley there.
While the bowling alley was a good opportunity, Alex wanted more. He had supplemented his income in college selling sandwiches to his fellow students. He thought he might be able to expand on this concept in Charleston.
There was an empty lot on the corner, and he decided that he would like to put a drive-in there. And so he told his daddy, he was going, and his father said, "What do you know about food?" He says, "Food is promotion. If you could promote your business and you give them quality food, you won't have a problem." And that's when he started his first Shoney's in Charleston, West Virginia.
The year was 1947. The drive-in was originally called Parquet, but when Alex went to register it, he found several others were using the same name.
And after 10,000 names, ones we couldn't register because they'd been used already, I told my husband in the beginning we'd call it Shoney's, and he thought I was crazy, but that's the name.
Shoney's emphasized value and fun.
for 35 cents you could get French fries, hamburger, and a Coke on the curb.
Alex was a promoter, and he came up with a variety of ways to bring in customers besides the food and value.
Our first drive-in, which cost $7,500, he paid $2,500 for the building and $5,000 for the equipment. And he did over $100,000 the first year. So he put a better roof on his building, and he put a radio station on top of his building. You call up the radio station from your car and get any song you want played, and it was a great success.
Alex would build his restaurant into one of the first and most successful franchise restaurants in the United States, creating the Big Boy trademark sandwich, so named for Alex's nickname as an All-American football player at Ohio State. Under Alex, the Shoney's organization also developed and operated the Captain D's fast food seafood chain. By the 1990s, the company operated over 1,000 restaurants.
When my husband passed away, there were 1,900 Shoney's and Captain D's, 500 Captain D's, about 500, and about 1,400 Shoney's. And in 1981, I remember we did $1 billion worth of business. And in 1981, $1 billion was a lot of money.
During the years Alex was building a company, Betty became involved with several nonprofit organizations in Charleston. She was also busy raising her family and became involved in all of her children's activities.
I was Girl Scout leader, I was a Cub Scout mother, I was cookie chairman, I was, being Alex was in the food business, all the bazaars, and we had bazaars at school and raised money all the time. I was very active in organizations, but I never worked. I worked. I had my first child at 28, and the last one left for college at 66. So I worked, but I did not have a job, a professional job.
In the 1950s, Alex's parents would winter in Sarasota. Alex, Betty, and their children came to visit.
They stayed at a place called Florida Gardens. There were only 2 hotels on the beach, and they wouldn't rent by the month. It was better for them to rent by the day or the week. And interestingly enough, the Red Sox were staying there. They had their winter headquarters down here at the time, and Ted Williams would go around and collect money for United Way at Florida Gardens. It was the intersection of 41 and 301.
Not only did they meet the great baseball player, but they had an opportunity to be extras in Cecil B. DeMille's The Greatest Show on Earth, filmed in Sarasota.
And we were part of the crowd standing on the street watching the parade after the fire that they had. We loved it then. We still love it. I feel like I'm in paradise.
By 1975, they were ready to slow down. They moved to Sarasota during the winters. They rented a home on Longboat Key. Their youngest daughter, Emily, was then 9 years old. Betty soon determined Longboat was not going to work for them.
And I found out there was no school bus. I would have to take her into Bird Key to catch a school bus every morning. And here I was, a 57-year-old mother, had to carpool, So we moved down on Siesta Key for 10 years till she graduated from Riverview. And then we moved back to Longboat.
The couple became entrenched in the Sarasota community. Alex retired from his restaurant business and took on the position of full-time philanthropist. Betty and Alex recognized the importance of education and began scholarship programs to help young people advance.
At West Virginia University, we have scholarships, wonderful scholarships there. And at Ohio State University, and I know in West Virginia, in 1979 already, we had graduated 39 students on college scholarships. So by now, I guess it's over 100 easily.
In the mid-1980s, a determined Kay Glasser approached Alex for funding to build a single facility in order to make social services more accessible and affordable to those who need them, and support the community agencies that provide those services.
I had to get a mortgage to finance this $2.5 million human service center. And the only way I could get it was to show the financial institution that I had some backup money. And the only person I knew to whom I could make my first approach was Alex. He said, if you can get a total of 17 agencies, I will give you $450,000 over a 3-year period.
In 1990, they opened the Glasser Schoenbaum Human Services Center, bringing 17 nonprofit agencies onto one campus.
These agencies are servicing approximately 11,000 people a month.
Someday we hope not to charge them any rent at all. Now they're being charged minimal rent, but hopefully our endowment will be able to pay for their rent, and they'll be able to use all their money that they're given for their purpose that they're there.
Over the next several years, the Schoenbaums were thoroughly enjoying their retirement and the opportunity to give back to others when, on November 23, 1996, while watching their beloved Ohio State Buckeyes lose to their arch-rival Michigan with friends on Longboat Key, Alex suffered a heart attack. After everyone left the party, he told Betty he was not feeling well and would need help to the car. He was taken to Sarasota Memorial Hospital, where he died on December 6, 1996. It took some time, but with the help of family and friends, Betty began to find her way without Alex. She soon picked up the philanthropic mantle.
When my husband passed away, that's when I blossomed, because my husband normally gave the money away. I mean, I wouldn't have much to say about it because he made the money. I felt like he could give it away the way he wants. But then I was in charge, and I was able to fulfill a lot of my dreams. And of course, everything I do, whatever I do, whenever I give money, I say to my husband, I know you'd like what I did and you'd be proud of me.
Betty continues to support organizations that were important to Alex, but has added many of her own.
Betty is a hands-on person. As a board member, she is invaluable. She extends her hand to those in need, the homeless, those who need rent to be paid, etc., and is always there even to fund a building to assist these people.
Well, I remember a time when we were discussing how the organization is growing, how we have so many programs and services, and how we ran out of space. And she was in our committee to look at the organization's needs and to prepare a plan to where we would be in the future. And in the middle of the conversation, she said, "Don't worry, stop looking. I'm going to help you." And we said, "Okay." And she said, no, you're not hearing me. I'm going to help you." And said, "I'm making you a major gift. You're going to have your building, and you're going to be able to provide all these programs to the community that you haven't been able to because of lack of space."
She continues to be an integral part of the Salvation Army and helping us to move the Army forward. She's on our advisory board here in Sarasota. And the wonderful thing about Betty is the fact that she not only does and gives herself, but she always encourages others to become a part of that. And I think that's the marvelous thing about Betty. If you're around her, you want to do the most good. And that's always encouraging. To me, every community needs a Betty Schoenbaum.
I call her one of our jewels at Sarasota. And she's been a particular jewel for the Women's Resource Center because she gives not only of her generosity, but she gives her time by serving on the board, by coming to our events. She gives her energy, and she gives that zest and determination for the programs and services which benefit the women that we reach out to and that we serve.
On November 6, 2011, the Glasser Schoenbaum Human Services Center honored Betty with a benefit appropriately called A Big Hug Back to Betty.
She's known for her hugs almost as much as she's known as her motto, "Give while you live." And she's a great hugger, nice and firm and tight, like she really, really means it. And it's a pleasure to get one of her hugs.
The evening was a great success, and I'm proud to say that, her wish, the fact that it would help the center, that was very successful, and the fact, that we raised about $200,000, which will all go, towards benefiting the center and the agencies on campus.
Betty continues to provide scholarships to worthy recipients. She's even designed her own programs.
It's my greatest joy, and I keep in contact. I never just give a person a check and say, that's it, But I keep in contact, and they write to me and tell me when they get a new house and when their babies are born and everything, and it's such a joy. It is such a joy to know your students and know how successful they've been.
Those who know her will attest Betty is a fun, loving spirit who is always ready to give her team support for Ohio State.
Betty comes to the football games. In fact, this is what she wears when she comes to the football game. She is there to cheer her team on, and should they get behind, she gets out her pom-poms and does 2 bits, 4 bits, 6 bucks a dollar, all for Buckeyes. Stand up and holler, and we do, and they win.
Betty Schoenbaum has found the love of giving and discovered that she benefits as much as the people and organizations she helps.
I think I've been one of the most blessed women in the world. That's just how I feel. And this giving is living. This giving is me. And when I give, I feel like I keep in contact with the people, and I have the joy of knowing what good I'm doing for other people. It's just an amazing, wonderful thing. Giving, and even if you can't give money, if you give time, the joy you get, and I think it makes you live longer. I really think when you have a purpose, when you get up in the morning to do something for somebody else, whether it's giving money or giving time, I think it's very important.
Betty Schoenbaum loves people, and her compassion finds its genesis in her faith. We ask Betty for her advice for those who follow.
And it all boils down to this: do unto others as you would have others do unto you. This would be a beautiful world. This is my significant other. Everybody should have a significant other like I have. I don't have to cook for him. I don't have to do the laundry. I don't have to listen to his snoring. All I had to do is come over here and give him a hug.